Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now we'd like to hand over the stage to the moderator, Dipankar. And just to remind you, this book is available right at the back, next to the author signing tent. Go grab your copies and have it signed. Thank you.
I just wanted to congratulate Sutapa for this book. She sent it to me, I think, 2 or 3 months ago, and she said, could we please consider it for the Jaipur Literature Festival? We're very keen to continue to look at the platform for new writing, for new books, and we're absolutely delighted that Sutapa agreed to come to the Jaipur Literature Festival to release her book. Sutapa, many congratulations. I think both of you are going to unpack what this book is about and why you should pick it up and buy it and get it signed at the Author's Lounge. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you so much. Sutapa, directly to you. You have written a lot of long form and a lot of short stories. How do you treat the two and what is your personal favorite, short stories or the long form?
First and foremost, thank you so much, Dipankar. It's been a great thing to launch this book. And thank you everyone for being here with me for this launch. A wonderful moment for me. Thank you so much. And now to your question. Yes, I have written both the long form and the short form, quite a few of them. And I enjoy writing both. Of course, there's a difference because I believe in doing a lot of research for all my books. And whether they are historical narratives, whether they are thrillers, whether they are non-fiction, I do a lot of research. The long form gives me the opportunity to insert a lot of factual nuggets that I discovered during my research, both into the plot, into the character, and into the setting. So whether it was my historical narratives like Padmavati or Parvati Bai, or the Legend of Genghis Khan, or The Curse of Nader Shah, and even thrillers like The Cursed Inheritance, Murder in the Jungle, or even a non-fiction like The Birth of My Nation, I have been able to create complex characters, add a lot of secondary characters. I've been able to also develop complex plots with a lot of subplots in it, with a lot of twists and turns. And I have been able to have a lot of timelines, different kinds of timelines in different kinds of location. So that is an opportunity which the long form gives. Now in the short form, which I have done for The Anatomy of Affection and many other anthologies, I have to be very careful because obviously, the length of the story is much shorter than a full novel. What I do in this case is I focus on a single conflict. And that single conflict is such that the plot also contributes to it. I cannot have too many characters, so I have 2 main characters and a few secondary characters. And those secondary characters also contribute to bolstering and supporting the main characters. At the same time, my descriptions have to be very concise. They have to be very pithy. But you know something, I enjoy the challenge because I love playing with language. And if I have to create, sentences, or I have to create content which is very pithy, very concise, uses the minimal words, but expresses substantially, I feel very satisfied when I can do that. So I enjoy both the forms.
That's very... Am I audible? Yeah. Is it better now? Yeah. So, interestingly, we all believe that it's time for short stories and people are going to read more short form because apparently we are very busy and have limited span of attention and hence this should work. And a lot of short stories are coming up. By the way, Sutapa has more than 100 stories. And that takes me to my next question, that what is the essence of Anatomy of Affection? And from your entire repertoire of more than 100 stories, how did you pick up the right ones for this particular collection?
So The Anatomy of Affection is a very special book for me because this is a book which taps affection, which is actually a very evocative emotion. A lot of us, think that love, especially romantic love, is more significant than affection. But the fact is that affection is the mother lode. It is from affection that all the different kinds of love arises. So affection exists in all of us. Sometimes it's a circumstances, sometimes it's a situation, sometimes it may be a relationship, and that affection gushes out. Not only does it gush out, it spreads in our entire being, and it keeps growing over lifetime. And at the end of it, it gives us supreme contentment so that we can't get let go of it. That is what is affection. So this book, The Anatomy of Affection, actually profiles each of these avatars of love, of this sentiment. So whether it is, a mother's love for her child and a child's love for the mother, whether it is the love of a soldier for his nation, which might make him, give up his life for the nation, or it could be a love that is desperately being sought by a misunderstood gay man. Or it could be a love which transcends grief of loss. Or it could be love which is self-love, to understand one's own worthiness. And eventually it can be love for humanity, including people who are disaffected, people who are social outcasts. So all the stories in the Anatomy of Affection profiles one or the other kind of love. And that is what makes this book so special.
But then, if you have profiled affection so well, you've also added a twist in every tale, which is a very clear indicator of probably thriller style stories. What was the reason of bringing in that angle for each of your stories? Why is there a twist in every story?
So, Dipankar, what I think that every story must evolve. And at the end, there should be a substance to that story. Because obviously twists always make stories very appealing to the reader. And when the reader has finished a story and he reaches the quirk at the end, he gets to think beyond the story. And that gives him satisfaction. So he is incited to start the next story. And I believe that when he has completed all the stories in the Anatomy of Affection, I think each one of them will touch a chord in his heart. And he will be as contented as this sentiment brings to the human heart.
That's very interesting. But then, in case of a short story, what do you consider is more important? Is it the character or is it the plot? And how do you treat the two in limited word space available?
So, Dipankar, I believe that the character and the plot are actually two pillars which hold up the entire scaffolding of a story. So they're both very, very important. Now, obviously, in a short form, in a short story, one has to treat both of them, the balance between both of them very carefully, with a lot of skill and a lot of thought. So what I do is, I start off with a single conflict. I focus on a single conflict, and I make sure that the events of the plot are through the character's motivations and his intentions, what he wants to do, and his decisions. So that's how the plot and the character are interlinked. At the same time, I use the plot sometimes to delve deep into my character's personality and also to reveal his inner struggles. So I try to mesh the both. That is what I try to do whenever I have a short form. So if I can give you some examples, I think it will become even clearer. So in this Anatomy of Affection, there is a story which is called The Inheritance, which is about a mother's love for her small daughter. But that daughter is constantly talking about her past life and the life that she has lived with another family. Now this mother is afraid that if that little daughter comes in contact with that family, she might just lose her daughter. But she's a mother. So what she does is, she ensures that her daughter meets that family, even though she's scared of losing her daughter. And at the end of the story, when the daughter decides to return to her mother, that is a victory of maternal love. So that is how the plot and the character are meshed together. In another story, which is called I've Got Promises to Keep, the entire story is a memory. And the character and the plot and the setting are very complex. But at the end of it, the protagonist discovers how valuable and worthy she is to herself. So that is again how the plot contributes to the character's, discovery to finding out about herself. And I think I can give a third story, which is again it's a favorite of mine. In fact, it's called My God Particle, where the character evolves through a tragedy. And there is a twist at the end, but that twist really makes the reader think and reflect on life and what life may bring.
Interesting. And before I take a quick poll with the audience on short stories, you've written historical fiction, you've written thrillers, you've written for children. Are short stories typically genre specific, or how do you traverse multiple genres in the same collection?
So, for example, this book, The Anatomy of Affection, I have only targeted affection as a sentiment. All the protagonists are different. They come from different walks of life. They're different age groups, different social stratas. And yet, when they are faced with a certain situation, it is the affection in their hearts to which responds to that circumstance. So the theme is basically affection, but the genres can be totally different.
Do you write for a certain audience, or do you write for yourself, which you believe would later on resonate with other audience?
I write first for myself, always. I need to be contented and satisfied, and that must come out in my writing. And I believe that is what is going to pull my reader in.
For a short story, what do you think is the single most important thing that works for a reader?
I think what really works for a reader is the evolvement. The plot as well as the character needs to evolve. Even if the story is just about 1,500 words, you can still do that. So at the end of the story, not only does the plot come to an end, but we find that the character has changed. That, I think, works.
A lot of people say that probably short stories are too little a time space for us to get invested in the character. How do you respond to that?
I don't believe that, because it all depends upon how the writer will develop the character. Characters can be developed in many ways. So in a short story, we can use dialogues to develop the character. You don't have to give a description because you have that many words only. So use short dialogues, and that itself will create your character for your reader. The reader will be able to visualize the character from the way the character speaks. It could be an accent, it could be a quirk that the character has, and the character appears in front of the reader's, a mental image forms in the reader's mind. And that, I think, is how we can use the short story form.
The initial readers who've read this book have come back and told us that the book has certain cinematic appeal, which means that a lot of them lend very well to conversion onto the screen. Did you actively work towards that? Do you believe that was something in your mind?
When I write, I need to see it in my mind. I think since I see what I'm writing, I need to see the character right there in front of me. Maybe that's the reason my writing is called very visual.
That's very interesting. So how many of the audience would say they prefer reading short stories more than long form? And if I may take a quick appeal, we have the mic ready, right? So what appeals to you in a short story more than a long form? Over there.
So what appeals to me and has always appealed, I love the novel or the long form equally, but what I really enjoy about the short story is that it's almost like a little dewdrop, in very little, it has to kind of reflect so much. And so I love in fact, I feel that writing the short story is even tougher than writing, longer fiction. And equally, therefore, reading a short story, as a reader, you bring so much of yourself to really understanding what the writer has given to you in a brief nutshell and figuring out the before and the after of it for yourself. I love that about a short story.
Brilliant. That's a
Thank
very good
you.
input. I'll come to that question. I have something in my mind. But anybody else with an opinion about short stories? Yeah, I think somebody over here, this side.
Right. So again, I love both long format novels equally. But I think where short stories come in, because I see, look at the culture of reading in itself. For example, if I look at people who are trying to find the time to read but are not able to find the time to read, short stories offer an option where even, let's say, I read a couple of stories, and after that I got to something and couldn't pick up the book. I can pick up the book again. In a long format, like, you feel lost. You have to reread certain sections, certain chapters. In a short story, I can continue the book whenever I want. I can pick it up whenever I want. So I think that offers an option for people who are just struggling to find as much time to read as they would like to.
Very good point. Convenience of reading. Anybody else with an opinion? Yeah, over here, gentleman right in front. Yeah.
So in the stories, what has appealed to me, I have read many, that how the emotion is related to a particular situation which we all feel but never realize it exists, whether it's envy, jealousy, love, or sadness. So name it, Tagore, Premchand, Chekhov, Mopasa, they have been able to connect the emotion with the situation very well. That is what I feel.
Great.
I think you should read this book because that is exactly what I've attempted to do. To connect the emotion to the situation and then to the heart of the reader.
So if I connect the dots for all of these and I say a question, I'm bringing a question is, a lot is left unsaid in a short story. It is for you to decipher, as a reader, to make whatever you want to out of it. Is that a deliberate attempt in all short stories, whether it is classics, whether it is contemporary, overall?
I believe so because a short story, while he just said that it should take you very little time to read it, it should leave you with some thoughts. It should remain in your mind. And you just mentioned some very famous short story writers. Why is it that you mentioned them? Because they left something in your mind and that is what you remember today. So that is the essence of a short story. It must remain, it must exist in your memory and in your heart.
Great. I think on that note, we'll bring this session to a close. Sagar is already on stage pushing us out. Thank you so much, Sutapa. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I hope that all of you will pick up the book. There's a signing counter right next door at the back. Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much.
everyone. Thank you for being with me. Thank you. Thank you, Dipankar. Thank you, JLF.